In a cemetery inside of a national park, a body is found hanging from a tree, with the words "Fed" written across their chest. But this is only the beginning of a very deep mystery that could be as simple as suicide or as deep as political unrest. We're telling this story tonight.
What you are about to hear is believed to be real, based on witness accounts, testimonies, and public record. This is terrifying and true.
William Edwin Bill Sparkman Jr. was born on August 12, 1958 in Mulberry, Florida. He was a school teacher and field representative for the United States Census Bureau, living a pretty normal life, at least based on what it appeared from the outside, until September 12, 2009, when his life came to a rather abrupt and unexpected end in the rugged expanses of Clay County, Kentucky. This is the story of what happened to Bill Sparkman, full of twists and turns you would never in a million years guess. We'll be telling that story right here tonight after these quick words. So make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss another mystery being unfolded. Bill Sparkman's journey commenced in the sun-soaked landscapes of Florida, where he was raised as the eldest of 3 sons in a family that valued education and hard work. His early years were marked by stints as an altar boy, football team manager, and even a venture into journalism as a contributor to the local newspaper, the Mulberry Press. But it was his transition into adulthood that took him on an unexpected journey, one that would lead him from the Boy Scouts of America to the halls of academia and the heart of the United States Census Bureau. As Sparkman navigated the twists and turns of life, he found himself stationed in London, Kentucky, a place far away from his Florida roots. Here, he embraced parenthood as he raised his adopted son, Josh. Sparkman's love life is not very well known, and it is popularly believed that he was single. Bill was also a very active member of his local Methodist church and was known not just for his professionalism, but also for his dedication to nurturing young minds as well as his own. His strong sense of purpose, when it came to his career in education, is also reflected in the fact that he continued pursuing a degree through Western Governors University, even in the face of a formidable adversary, stage 3 lymphoma cancer. While studying, Sparkman was diagnosed with cancer, but he refused to give in to his illness and continued to battle every single day. Despite having to go through chemotherapy treatments, he persisted in his commitment to both his studies and his duties as a field representative. During this time, he was also invited to address his fellow graduates at the commencement ceremony of Western Governors University. In his speech, he mentioned, quote, "I'd been knocked down, but I refused to be knocked out. Those brick walls will appear from time to time in your career. Do not let them stop you. There are no failures, just teaching moments." Some of you might be confused now because why would I be sharing what he mentioned in a speech at some time in his life? Well, just keep hanging on and you'll find out. With a murder mystery case, there's no way of knowing which minor details could reveal quite a lot at times. Moving forward, things took a turn for the unexpected on September 12, 2009, when a family stumbled upon Sparkman's lifeless body in a rural Kentucky cemetery. At 6:15 p.m. on the 12th of September, a 41-year-old man hailing from Ohio by the name of Jerry Weaver, along with his wife Connie and their 19-year-old daughter Brittany, decided to visit the cemetery to pay their respects to the grave of some relatives. As the family was making their way to the grave, their eyes met with the motionless body of Bill Sparkman, hanging naked from a tree with the word "Fed" written across his chest. Bear in mind that the Hoskins Cemetery is located in the heart of the Daniel Boone National Forest, an expanse of over 700,000 acres of desolate wilderness in southeastern Kentucky, and it's not easy to find. Most of the families living in the area have persisted for generations, struggling to sustain a meager livelihood by operating tow trucks, repairing cars, or excavating and vending wild ginseng and other medicinal plants. With little to no cellular service and a history of accidents and misfortune, this is the kind of place most people will not dare enter without the support of some kind of weapon for self-defense. Eventually, the Weaver family gathered enough courage to call the police, and Weaver, who was also recently promoted to a detective post, decided to go near the corpse and found out that the man's wrists and ankles were bound with gray duct tape. A red flag was stuffed into his mouth, which was secured with tape wrapped around his head. A U.S. Census Bureau identification card dangled from the tape near his right ear. The man was slumped forward and his feet were touching the ground, and he had a noose tightened around his neck. In no time, the police arrived at the scene and his body was taken care of. But this was more than just an ordinary death. Detectives now had to find out if this was a suicide or a murder or something else altogether. The condition in which he was found, with the word "Fed" written on his chest and signs of possible suicide, contributed significantly to the complexity of the situation, as anyone could probably imagine. The initial shockwaves of this discovery rippled far and wide and caused an insane amount of media frenzy and speculation. The circumstances surrounding Sparkman's death seemed to oscillate between sinister crime and unsettling suicide, and as the investigation unfolded, Kentucky State Police faced an incredibly daunting task: separating fact from fiction. Many different possibilities of how Bill could have died were pointed out by people, but like most other murder mystery cases, no black and white evidence would provide concrete support to any theory, whether it be one that suggests this was indeed a suicide or one which suggests that this was a murder driven by government intolerance. Let's have a quick look at some of the possible factors that could have resulted in this death. Firstly, some people thought that Sparkman might have accidentally found a place where drugs were being made, like a hidden spot where the dealers grew marijuana or manufactured methamphetamine. In that circumstance, they would have every reason to murder him in order to keep their secret. Others believed that he might have gone to a place where people simply didn't like strangers or outsiders, especially those who worked for the United States government. A second possible explanation comes from the contribution of a forensic pathologist who was entrusted with the task of examining Sparkman's body and found some evidence that would support the hypothesis that the cause of his death was asphyxiation. Rolfe, the pathologist, also concluded that the blood that had leaked out of Sparkman's ear was due to insect infestation. More importantly, though, it was found out that there were little signs of bruising on parts of his body that had been tied, which indicates that Sparkman had not struggled against his attacker. This is, of course, quite significant because it meant that he was already dead or unconscious before he was bound, or that he had died accidentally from autoerotic asphyxiation or deliberately killing himself. And this brings our discussion to another very interesting angle to this case, the possibility of a staged suicide. In fact, on November 23rd, investigators did officially rule out the death as a suicide. But some would still call it a possibility, because, like we've said before, it's very difficult to establish concrete facts in such complex cases. The police verdict, however, was based on the input of some of Bill's close associates, who suggested that Sparkman had committed suicide because he believed that his cancer had returned and did not want to go through the process of fighting it again. He had also recently purchased a life insurance policy amounting to $600,000. This insurance was intended for his financially challenged son if he died, but it wouldn't cover suicide or death from cancer. According to the police, Sparkman had the incentive of providing financial assistance to his son, which would encourage him to make his death appear as a homicide. However, this point has been contradicted by many, including his son, who have mentioned several times to the police and in interviews that it would be incredibly disrespectful to call the death of his father a suicide because he was a man of great strength and courage and had battled many hardships alone and with confidence, and so it would not be possible for him to take his own life. His son Josh's role in this case is not all innocent, since Bill Sparkman's family did suspect he might have had something to do with the murder, given the life insurance situation. And if you remember from earlier, we mentioned how he continued his studies and gave incredibly motivational speeches while he was battling cancer and undergoing chemotherapy, which is a very draining and painful process both in terms of the physical and psychological effects. It does add weight to the narrative of Josh because it is difficult to imagine how someone with so much confidence and positivity could take their own life. But then again, we can never be completely sure of this, because we don't know without a shadow of a doubt what exactly was going through his mind at the time. For our final point, we'll talk a little bit about the role that politics and government intolerance could have possibly played here. At the time, when investigations were still being conducted, an Associated Press article suggested that the area in which Bill was murdered had a long history of trouble with trusting the government. Back in the day, there were clashes between moonshiners and government agents in that very region. Given the fact that the place was also quite well known for being a hub for growing marijuana, many federal agencies had been involved in drug and corruption matters. And this could have triggered anger against Sparkman as well, who, as we mentioned earlier, was a member of the federal census. But there's another layer to this story, because some people have even suggested that Sparkman's death could be linked to all the controversy around the 2010 federal census. Back in 2009, there was quite a fuss about it, as some people were worried that the census data could be used against regular citizens, and therefore, they boycotted it. Others were concerned that it was making the government too powerful, and some Latino activists even skipped it to push for changes in immigration policies. But here's the kicker. People online, especially in the liberal blogosphere, started connecting the dots, putting forward the idea that maybe Sparkman's death had something to do with the anti-government sentiment during Barack Obama's presidency. These are all widely and vastly different points. And even though the police have labeled this case as a staged suicide, we simply cannot be 100% sure of this. Ultimately, though, the undeniable truth is the human tragedy at the heart of the story. A life had been lost, leaving behind grieving loved ones, unanswered questions, and a legacy forever marked by uncertainty. Bill Sparkman's story was much more than just a puzzle. It was a reflection of the complex interplay between political events, perceptions, the media, and the human need for narrative. It also serves as a stark reminder that even in a world saturated with information, some questions remain unanswered and mysteries unsolved. There's also one other complication, and that is the fact that sometimes our loved ones are hiding the truth from us, hiding how they really feel, hiding when they're scared, hiding when they feel hopeless. And that's truly a terrible place to be. If you or someone you love is dealing with suicidal thoughts, you are not alone. Call or text 988 in the United States to connect with the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. The Lifeline provides 24-hour confidential support to anyone in suicidal crisis or emotional distress. Support is also available via live chat. Call or text 988 in the United States. But now, my friends, I'm going to leave you until next week. Stay safe and make sure to tell someone you love them. Terrifying and True is narrated by Enrique Couto. It's executive produced by Rob Fields and Mark Shields. Produced by Daniel Wilder with original theme music by Ray Mattis. If you have a story you'd like us to cover on the program, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. And if you want to support us in a very direct way, go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can support us and allow us to keep the spooky rolling and rolling and rolling. And I want to say a big thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names at the end of the show. And they are Johnny Nix, John Kalin, Bobbletopia.com, Jenny Green, Brent McCullough, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time right here on Weekly Spooky and Terrifying and True.